I've been reflecting a little bit lately on teamwork. I've always felt it was pretty important, and you learn a lot about your team when it's challenging times. You don't always learn that much when you're winning. We're in challenging times now, and we're learning so much about the people who are team people in our province, people who are staying the course, people who are staying at home, people who are doing the things they need to do to stay healthy, people who are stepping up to help other people, people who are doing the right things to help us flatten the COVID curve. So to all of you who are on the Team Manitoba, I just want to say thanks so much for doing that. In my heart, and I think in a lot of us in our thoughts right now, are small businesses around our province that are a key part of the fiber of our economy, obviously, but also of our communities. And I want to say a special thank you to Manitoba businesses that are in challenging times right now, and to recognize our business community. We have a tremendous advantage over and above many other jurisdictions across Canada and around the world in the way in which we step up and face challenges together, and our small business community has always done that for us. They've always been part of leading that effort. So again, I say thanks to them. Thank you to you who have adjusted the way you've done business too, to make alterations. I've been in a couple of stores where they've made fundamental changes in the way they run their operations to protect their customers and to allow people to stay safe in those stores. And I think that's really responsible and the right thing for them to do. And again, if you've done that in your business, I thank you for doing that. And if you haven't, please undertake to do so. A lot of these businesses, as you know, are mom and pop shops. They're small enterprises, and having restrictions on people where they have to stay at home has a real influence on, obviously, the ability of those businesses to keep employees on and to keep operating. We're all excited about the possibility of doing better, as we have been doing with our COVID numbers. And as we do better with our COVID numbers and we hold them down and we flatten that curve, this increases our opportunities to then reopen our small business economy and let people have the freedoms that none of us take for granted anymore, having had them restricted. So we've been working very, very hard across all government and with our partners to find ways to help support all of you, but also to support our small business population in the province. And that is why today I'm really pleased to announce that the Workers' Compensation Board of Manitoba, this has real benefits. Not just to the private sector, I should mention. In the healthcare sector, for example, which includes RHAs, cancer care, Riverview, personal care homes as well. This equates to approximately a $6.2 million refund. So this is significant. As part of our Manitoba Protection Plan, this refunds another significant step we've taken to help small businesses and individuals and families, and this builds on the steps we have already taken, including directing Manitoba Hydro and Centra Gas not to disconnect customers at this time, deferring hydro bills without penalty or interest, also Centra Gas bills, MPI bills, and the workers' compensation levies going forward. Also taken steps to protect tenants from evictions in our province, deferring increases in Manitoba Pharmacare deductible rates, making home and business property insurance more affordable to Manitobans by, on July 1st of this year, removing $75 million of annual PST from residential and business properties, extending tax filing deadlines for small and medium-sized businesses with monthly remittances of up to $10,000. That's going to support more than 20,000 businesses in our province. And introducing a temporary exception to employment standards regulations to ensure temporary layoffs after March 1st do not equal a termination. That's protecting workers who have to lose some work time in our province. And this builds on what we've previously done as a government in our first 4 years, reducing expensive red tape for small businesses. We've been told by a noted business organization, Canadian Federation of Independent Business, we lead North America in reducing expensive red tape for our small businesses, raising the small business tax exemption, lowering income taxes, indexing our tax brackets, lowering the PST, all of these things together have set the stage for Manitoba, not only to have an excellent climate up till this pandemic for business growth, where now we are also in readiness for post-pandemic recovery. And that positions Manitoba very, very well. In addition today, I want to say thank you to the federal government. The federal government has announced a number of economic programs over the last several weeks. Yesterday, they alluded to their intention to introduce a program which we will be partnering with them on. We believe this is an excellent program, and this is called the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program, and Manitoba will contribute $16 million to that program to assist in supporting payments on mortgages on property, assist non-essential small business tenants facing financial hardship due to COVID by providing forgivable loans. I am told Manitoba is the first province. I'll be confirming with the Deputy Prime Minister in a few hours, but I believe we are the first province to partner with the federal government on this proposal. We think it is a good one, and we thank the federal government again for working in partnership with us, not in competition and not with overlap, but rather in a complementary way to design programs that can help. The same people, after all, who pay federal taxes pay provincial ones, and we want to make sure we serve that one pocket where that money comes out of with effective programs. There'll be more details available on this program later today, I understand, but again, I say thank you. Additionally, I wanted to say a thank you to all of the groups that we have been meeting with and individuals we've been meeting with. There are hundreds of them, but specifically I'd like to reference the group that represents our economic development team. This is approximately 40 industry leaders and representatives from around the province who are on a call with us every 2 days and who have been assisting us and been integral to helping us in designing the programs that we have outlined so far, and in others that we'll be outlining as early as tomorrow and later this week. These people have been acting as a team, and this is my theme today, I guess, in supporting us in designing the kinds of programs that can make Manitoba the leader in coming back from this pandemic. So I say thank you to them. We are a resilient province. We are projected by most of the analysts, and, whether in banks or bond rating companies, to be the province that is best positioned to come back from this pandemic. And we are going to make that happen. We are resilient financially. We are resilient socially. But we are resilient because we are a team of people who work together. And so we will face this challenge together, just like the Manitoba Bison turn together and face the storm and protect each other in doing that. Public safety will always be our first concern. But as we continue to focus on our public safety successfully, our economy and its rejuvenation, which supports our social networks like healthcare, education, and social services, its recovery will become our central focus in tandem. We can move forward only if both these things work together, and that is exactly how we are focusing our activities now. First, in restoring safe services together. That first acronym is what's in my mind every day. Together, we're going to beat this thing. Ensemble, nous vaincrons le COVID-19. Thank you. I look forward to taking your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. A reminder to our reporters online, you will have one primary question and one follow-up. From the Winnipeg Sun, Josh.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. This is Josh Aldridge with the Winnipeg Sun. You said there's going to be more information available later, but when it comes to the business rent assist program that you're partnering with the federal government on, how quickly will those funds be available for businesses? Are you able to talk about that a little bit in terms of are they going to have that rent assist available to them to make May rent?
Right, Josh. You're raising a really important issue. This is one of the reasons that I wanted to speak to the Deputy Prime Minister and have raised this with the Prime Minister on previous phone calls. The federal government's announced a number of programs, and this is not a criticism of the federal government. Please don't misinterpret this. But takeoffs are fine. We need the money to land. And so I was really pleased earlier today to be informed that the wage subsidy program, which is the cornerstone program the federal government has proposed for businesses affected by COVID, will be open for inputs next Monday. Now, this is 3 weeks after the program was announced, and it is a considerable time, but I think in defense of the federal government, they have been working to try to iron out how that program would work specifically, and so they've made numerous changes and alterations over the last number of days to the program, announcing various other programs so there wouldn't be duplication with that program. This has impacted us, obviously, and we are very inclined to urge the federal government to lengthen the period of the wage subsidy program to 6 months from 3, and also to change the structure of the program so there isn't a cliff at 30%. You have to prove 30% loss of revenue in essence. What if someone lost 29% of revenue? They shouldn't get 0 out of the program. So there should be a graduated or prorated approach to the program. And finally, on the third aspect that we're after the feds to improve upon, helpfully, as Manitobans make suggestions, they should also really focus on the turnaround time that you just alluded to in your question, because we need the money in the hands of our small business sector as soon as possible. And that's how our program will be designed, but we need the federal program to also be designed that way.
My follow-up has to deal with the Workers' Compensation Board and returning approximately $37 million in surplus funds. So will that be direct money to businesses, or will that, it says a credit, or will it just be money off of what they owe to the businesses owe to Workers' Compensation Board?
No, that's a direct premium back in the pockets of the contributors, Josh.
From CBC Radio-Canada, Patrick.
Bonjour, M. Pallister, Patrick Foucault, Radio-Canada. You mentioned yesterday that you would like Manitoba to be working to be the first province to reopen its economy. Obviously, that's not going to happen tomorrow, but could you give us an idea on how you would like to see such a process happening? What would be the steps, the conditions, the criteria, for example?
Yeah, c'est une question excellente, Patrick. Le protocole pour la réouverture, c'est très important, très important. La protection pour la santé les employés, l'employeur aussi, le client de cette petite entreprise, tout son facteur dans la décision pour le reopening, the reouverture. So what we're after is a progressive mechanism to protect Manitobans first and foremost, while allowing for businesses and various other operations to reopen. To do this, we have to have confidence among the general public that they will be safe, and that confidence must also exist for employees as they return to work. And so that's why testing, as we announced yesterday, will be upgraded, so we have the capacity to make sure that as we move to additional testing for non-essential personnel that are essential, frankly, in the rebuilding of our economy, that we're able to do that protection balanced with safety. The protection for the employees and the businesses means the safety of services can be reassured to Manitoba customers.
Merci, et merci encore de vos commentaires en français, toujours apprécié. And my follow-up question, Mr. Pallister, would be, are you considering to make it mandatory in Manitoba to wear masks in public transport like other regions in the world do?
We're looking at a variety of protections right now, but also as we move forward. But I should mention also that we are investing significantly as a government with our private sector and our academia in research towards a cure. Because this is the goal, of course, as we have achieved in fighting other viruses. My dad had polio, I mentioned the other day, and of course we have the Salk vaccine, but we need a cure, and so that battle remains. But as long as we do not have a vaccination or a cure, then the protocols that we've been using to date must be observed and respected, whether it be social distancing, hand washing, and the like. I think most Manitobans are, because we are doing very well at keeping our numbers down to date, fingers crossed, it is because Manitobans have been remembering those fundamentals. We must not forget those fundamentals. We must always remember them because it's contingent on us. If we follow those fundamentals, those protocols, we can help our small business friends and neighbors reopen their stores and businesses, and then we can help them by shopping there. So it's a marriage between the safety that we must create together and the opportunity for businesses to work to serve us as they have in the past and as they will again in the future, we all hope.
From CBC Manitoba, Bart.
Barbecue with CBC. Mr. Premier, sounds like there's rent subsidies in the federal program there aimed at commercial landlords for their commercial tenants. When will residential tenants begin to see some rent assistance from the province of Manitoba?
Sorry, Bartley, you cut out just towards the tail end. I got that the question was about tenants, but I missed the last part of your question.
Forgive me. When will residential tenants, it looks like commercial tenants are applying for this federal subsidy that you're signed on to. When will residential tenants be eligible for rent assistance from the province of Manitoba?
Right. Good question. I've just actually minutes ago, Bartley, got the information that the feds were moving ahead with the program and a general description, but I cannot tell you the degree to which it relates to residential tenants at this point in time. I will be raising the issue of the program in a general sense, of course, with Minister Freeland on our call. And that is a question I will very likely be able to raise with the Deputy Prime Minister on the call.
Very much for that. My second question is, how would you respond to criticisms from people such as Sandy Riley in the Free Press today and the finance professor Steve Yagao on our page last week about the pandemic policies reducing the economic rebound rather than putting Manitoba in a better position?
Well, I think the commentary is wonderful in a free society, and we have some freedoms restricted right now, so I'd be the last person to criticize people for expressing their views. I can only say that we're taking many actions which others who comment may not be aware of, and that would be, I suppose, in part my fault, because we're focused more on protection and getting results than we are on communicating them in advance of announcing them. So I can only say that in respect of criticisms about not doing enough for small business, that we have been working diligently with the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce here in Winnipeg and across the province. We've been working diligently and listening to organizations like the Canadian Federation for Independent Business. We've been working with, on an ongoing basis, almost daily, our retail council. We've been very, very interested in the perspectives of our trade associations, our exporters, and our major business council, Manitoba Business Council, has been instrumental also in providing us with advice. We're acting on that advice, but we're going to do it in concert and in partnership with municipal governments, federal government, and various associations that are impacted by these policies, so we'll make the right decisions in the right way at the right time to maximize the recovery opportunities for Manitoba.
From the Canadian Press, Steve.
Steve Lambert from the Canadian Press, Premier. Today's the day that you're expecting managers across government to have their list prepped about what workforce reduction measures can be had. Last we heard, the federal government still hadn't agreed to extend some of its programs to the civil service to help you in that regard, and the workers' union says it's not ready to agree because it hasn't seen details. So what's the next step this week? Once you receive those plans, if you're not getting what you see as cooperation from the federal government and the unions, do you start laying out plans for layoffs?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to find resources for the front line. We're in a pandemic right now. We have people who are working their tails off on the front line of our healthcare and social service system to support our most vulnerable people in a way that they've never had to before, with risks in the workplace where they work that they've never had before. And we need to find hundreds of millions, and we are going to find those resources not just by borrowing on Manitoba's future, but by looking within our organization to find resources in areas where people are not able to serve the public right now, And we'll find those resources there. And I thank all our public servants, including those who may find some reduced work. Well, they've had reduced work in many cases for some time, but that will also find some reduced work for the next few weeks while we move the resources over to our front line, because it is our job to make sure we don't just borrow from our future when we will also, by the way, need social services and health care, but rather that we don't add to what is already the highest in debt. And we are the highest indebted province in Canada right now. So we're on a team here. We're a family. And we're going to find the resources from within our family to help those who need our help the most. That's how families work.
And as far as Crown corporations go, some have already cut back, such as Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries. You know, the casinos are shut down. They've issued temporary layoffs to many workers. And some other organizations have yet to haven't done that, such as Manitoba Public Insurance. What are you expecting from the Crowns, and are you going to see layoffs there?
Look, 96% of the job loss in Manitoba is in the private sector. If you have any sympathy at all for that, then do your part in the public sector. We're all in this together here. You know, we have probably over 200,000 Manitobans right now in the private sector that have lost income or jobs, or both, right? So what we need to do is work together to make sure, in the absence of the tax revenues that used to come from businesses that are now closed, or on incomes that are now lower in the private sector, we need to find resources from somewhere. There are two sources. One of them is to borrow from the future, which was how we got to the $1 billion of debt service costs that we have this year. The highest in Canada, by the way, for our size. Or we can do the logical, common sense thing that any family would do, where one of our family is not able to work full time, and we can find some savings there temporarily to support those who are working extra hard on the front line, then we should do exactly that, and that will be good for the Manitoba family.
From CTV Winnipeg, Jeff.
Oh, hi, Mr. Premier, Jeff Keel, CTV. On the WCB surplus that's being returned, you know, the CFIB and others have been calling for that surplus to be returned in good times, not just during a pandemic. So I guess my question is, what's left in there for a surplus to ensure that there's stability in the future? And and I guess to answer their question, why wasn't this returned? I guess a year ago, 2 years ago, when small businesses, medium-sized businesses have been calling for that.
Well, it actually was, Jeff. It was a return of about $70 million last year. This return adds to that. This is sustainable. This isn't. This is coincidental to the pandemic. It's being done because of positive investment returns and lower claim costs at workers' comp under the Workers' Comp Administration. And I say thank you to the management over there and to their board for a wise decision that puts more money back into the hands of small business people and, to a degree, as I mentioned earlier, into our healthcare system in Manitoba. Good decision, well-timed. Thank you very much.
And you say, I think the news release says $7 million will be there for small businesses. Do you have an idea of the average, what this 20% credit is, like the average premium these businesses will get back?
Well, that's tricky, Jeff. WCB insures more than 34,000 employers. That's about 3 out of 4 workers in the province, and it varies by employer. So I don't think I can give you much. I don't know that an average is very helpful. The total amount is in the tens of millions of dollars of the rebate. That's significant, and it's going to help companies of every size, big, medium, some larger ones as well.
From City News, Stephanie.
Hey, Mr. Premier, Stephanie Osuk with City News. Last week in the House, you said you'd be looking to find ways to support businesses that fell through the cracks of the federal programs. Just wondering when more announcements regarding that might be taking place.
Oh, sometime this week.
Okay, and then just to follow up on Steve's earlier question on the list for layoffs, when will we start to see the list of who will be laid off, and will those lists be made public?
Well, of course, two things, I guess, Stephanie, on that. First of all, as a government, we've avoided layoffs. We've virtually done no layoffs as a government. And so now our plan is not to do across-the-board layoffs, but rather do the work of partnering with our employers and the labor unions to find strategies so that we can identify those folks who aren't busy right now. I'll give you, an earlier question was about the only layoffs really that have occurred in the public sector so far, and that was workers at casinos. Obviously, workers at casinos don't have a lot to do. There's nobody in there to deal cards to. So common sense would say, why are you paying a full salary to someone who isn't able to work right now? So it's that kind of analysis in more detail that's got to happen at each of our Crown Corps and within government, so we can identify folks who aren't that busy right now, and they can then take some time off, and we can take the resources and move them over to assist on our front line. To the hundreds of millions of dollars that we need there, it needs to come from somewhere. It'll come from within the Manitoba family.
From the Winnipeg Free Press, Carol.
Hi, Mr. Premier. It's Carol Sanders at the Free Press. My question is, Ontario just released an updated COVID-19 modeling and projection memo saying that, providing this information is key to ensuring continued transparency with the public about the challenges that Ontario faces in dealing with COVID-19 and where there has been progress in flattening the curve. Given that, why are Manitobans not getting the same kind of transparency? Is that decision being made by you, or is that by Dr. Rousseau?
Well, transparency is what you're seeing right now, and it's what you get every day with Lynette Saragusa and with Dr. Rousseau. What I wouldn't want you to make the confusing conclusion that because you don't see a projection that somehow there's no transparency. The reality is quite different from that. Every pertinent question about the facts is being answered by me, by Dr. Rousseau, by Ms. Saragusa, and others. So the facts are what they are. The projections are a conjectured guess on where we might be in the future. You reference Ontario in your preamble. Ontario released projections about 10 days ago, which had a range of 500%. One could argue that that's transparency. I would argue that's conjecture. So we've had this discussion before. We're going to keep fighting COVID. Here's the reality. We have among the lowest case numbers in Canada. We're middle of the pack on testing. We're upgrading our testing, and we're doing everything we can to fight COVID on the front line. Those are the facts. And conjecture about what number of deaths and things like that, other jurisdictions have released those numbers. Ours are in preparation. Dr. Rousseau will tell you more about that, I'm sure, later today. But I would not want it stated, because it would be false to state it, that somehow this was a lack of transparency. Rather, this is a willingness to be transparent and to be careful about being accurate in the numbers that we give you.
So my follow-up question to that is, you have projections and you have modeling. Why should the government know what that information is and not the public? Is that not somehow obfuscating what's happening with the province and what challenges they're facing the province right now?
Not at all, Carol. In fact, the projections that are all over the map, all over the world, are one area. The other area is how do we keep our COVID case numbers down, find treatment, facilitate testing, the actual on-the-ground work. That's where we're focused. The doctor will release what the doctor wishes to release. I am not in any way involved in decisions around what Dr. Rousseau comments to you on. And if he chooses to comment on forecasting, that would be his choice. My choice would be that we have fewer people that die from COVID.
From Global, Brittany.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. Yesterday, you asked universities to come up with a tentative plan for staff reductions. Since tuition is the university's second highest source of money, what kind of tuition fee increase would be acceptable for college and universities next fall to make up that funding shortfall?
Well, tuition fee issues aside, Brittany, we're a family, and that includes university professors. So everybody's got a job to do, and some people have less work to do. And we're asking the universities to do exactly what everybody else in this province is doing, which is to determine where they can find savings. We have 250,000 people that are impacted in this province right now who are working with less than they had before COVID came, and it's not too much to ask any of the people in our Crown corporations or universities to take that challenge on. That's what we've asked them to do because they're part of the family too. Nobody is separate from this. Nobody is above this. Nobody is not part of this. We're all part of this together. That includes the universities.
And my follow-up would be, is the province looking at lifting the current cap of 5% plus inflation for that?
We'll deal with the ensuing issues when they arise, Brittany. Right now, as you know, as we all are, we're very, very much focused on dealing with the issues at hand. And the issues we have at hand right now are that we need more resources for our front line, and we have a choice. We can either work together to find them, or we can not do that work and we can borrow on our future. But what do we do if there's a pandemic in the future? What do we do if there's a flood in the future? Everybody will be asking the question in 2 years' time or 5, why didn't you do a better job of finding the resources without adding to the province's mortgage? So we're concerned about making sure we get our economy back working again, because it's what pays the bills. We're concerned about saving lives and protecting people. That's what our first and principal responsibility will remain.
From the Brandon Sun, Drew.
Thank you. This is Drew May at the Brandon Sun. Mr. Premier, a little bit earlier you were saying that the province is to find hundreds of millions for frontline healthcare workers, but right now we're only seeing 8 people hospitalized with COVID-19. So just wondering if you could break down exactly where this money needs to go in the healthcare system.
Well, I don't need to break it down for you. I can tell you exactly. Hundreds of millions of dollars for protective equipment alone, and we won't find enough to cover that with the exercise we're engaging on with universities. Let's just put it that way. We're talking about potentially billions of dollars of additional debt. We're talking about real costs, not just because we have low COVID numbers now, but because we have to be prepared if we have high COVID numbers later. This is about preparedness. It's about making sure that people aren't laid out in trolleys like you saw in Italy. This is making our healthcare system secure and making sure the people that work in it are secure as well.
And on a bit of a different topic, but on the Workers' Compensation Board announcement today, is the province at all considering a premium return from Manitoba Public Insurance as well?
Yeah, we'll have more to say on that in the not too distant future. Clearly what we will not do is support policies that endanger the sustainability of any protective body, whether it's crop insurance, Workers' Compensation Board, Manitoba Public Insurance. But we should seize the opportunity where it's fair and reasonable to do it to get more money back into the hands of Manitobans, because that's where the challenges are being faced, right at the household level, right at the small business level, right in the homes of retired Manitobans. If we can save people some money on their bills, and we've been doing that, we've been working hard to do that as a government, but if we can do that now at this particular time, I think Manitobans will really appreciate that, and I think it will help ensure that we can be the first province to come back from this pandemic challenge if we work together at it.
From CJOB, Diana.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. Diana from 680 CJOB. With respect to the ask of the public sector to look at cutting costs by up to 30% in terms of universities and whatnot, my question is, what about you? You have said you're not accepting your raise this year. That's not the same as reducing your own salary. As you mentioned, this is really a team effort. My question is, will you be reducing your own salary and those of the other MLAs at this time?
I've reduced my salary by 25% on my MLA pay.
And as a follow-up, we are hearing a lot of concerns over the long-term impacts of education if those proposed 10, 20, and 30% reductions kind of do happen. How does Manitoba's education landscape at the post-secondary level come out of that?
Well, look, other provinces across the country have in the past reduced their support for post-secondary, whether it's community colleges or universities, by double digits. You just have to take a look at the record in Saskatchewan as a comparative. We did not do that. We maintained our funding. And we've heard from the universities every year for the last 4 years that they want more. But we hear that from everybody all the time. The fact of the matter is, that's not what this issue is about. The fact of the matter is, we're looking for places where we can save money, where as a consequence of the COVID pandemic, people are not able to work full time. Now, we can save money by reducing payments to those people, and they can get employment insurance or a work share program if the unions would like that. We can avoid laying people off, take the resources that we set aside. Manitobans set aside in the employment insurance program $2 billion in the public sector over the last 10 years alone for exactly this eventuality. And now people are saying, some people are saying, I'm not wanting to be part of that because I'm not part of this pandemic thing, and I can just make exactly what I made before, even though I'm not working. And that is not a thesis that I buy, nor should anybody else. The fact of the matter is, we're all in this together, and you have to ask yourself, why would Manitobans, why would we as a government pay $2 billion into an employment insurance program and then not use it and borrow money on our kids instead? It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think it makes sense to any common sense Manitoban either. So everybody's in this together. We're asking for people to take a look at where they can find savings at the universities, because the universities are not separate from everybody else. They're funded by working Manitobans, they're funded by students, and they're part of this. And we're asking them to do the creative work of adapting, which is, of course, what universities are supposed to teach people to do when they go to them. So that's not too much to ask. And I think that if we're all part of the team, which is today's theme and should be our theme every day, then we do our part to help the front line. And that's what I'm asking universities to do.
From Bloomberg News, Jen.
Hi, Mr. Premier. Jen Starrett from Bloomberg News. I'm wondering if Ottawa is giving any indication that they're considering an emergency fund for provinces.
Jen, welcome to the call, and thank you for that. Our focus today, and it has been our focus, is to partner with the federal government and work effectively with them. We've made some requests of them that I'll be re-emphasizing today. One of them is that the federal government could act as the intermediary in borrowing money from the Bank of Canada for provinces. This is an important ask because it would save provinces across the country significant money, into the billions of dollars over the next decade, which could be put towards things like healthcare and social services rather than going to additional profit at the bank. So that's one of the asks. There are others. I emphasized earlier that we do need the federal government, where it has announced programming, to get it off the ground. And that would be in particular the case with the wage loss program, the wage loss subsidy program that's so important to our business sector across the country, coast to coast to coast. We need to get that program up and running, and we need to have it extended to a 6-month period. I don't think most economists are projecting economic recovery in a V shape on a graph. I think they're projecting it'll look more like a check mark, and we hope it will be up and to the right along, and not too, with more of a slope than flat. But it does mean that small businesses in our province and across the country are going to need wage subsidy support for a 6-month period, I would say, at the least.
Just as a follow-up, what is the total expected borrowing program out of Manitoba for this fiscal year, if you could estimate it, including from COVID?
It's over $10 billion, Jen. That's about double what we had anticipated. I want to be clear, though, and I think this is important to understand. We're not asking the federal government to be the intermediary on all provinces borrowing, because much of that was predicted. Much of that was anticipated. We're only asking for the federal government to help us with the COVID-related borrowing, the emergency borrowing, if you will. And we think that's a reasonable ask that would leave, as I say, billions of dollars in the hands of provinces who must run health care now and in the future, instead of in the hands of banks. It's fundamentally a question of whether you want stronger banks in Canada or stronger health care. I would choose health care. I hope most Canadians would agree. Just want to say thanks to everybody on the call. Keep doing what you're doing out there. Observe those fundamentals, because they are essential to your well-being and safety, and to that of those around you. Together we can beat this thing.